Hello, everybody, and welcome to the fourth episode of Tell Your Story. I'm Todd Nesloni. I am your resident host here on the Tell Your Story series, and I'm so excited this guest. Just to give everybody a background real quick with Tell Your Story, what the point of this show is to connect you with other people who are telling their stories by also sharing the stories of others in their lives who have impacted them. So I am thrilled this week to have my friend Jessica Cabeen here. So Jessica, thanks for joining.
Oh my gosh, I'm so geeking out still about this. So thanks for the invite.
You're hilarious. Well, so Jessica, tell us a little about yourself. How would you introduce yourself? People asked who you were.
First, my mom's watching. Oh my gosh, my mom's watching. This is awesome. So I tell you, my age and my personality don't match at all, Todd. So my name's Jessica Cabeen, and I am a kindergarten principal in Austin, Minnesota. So I think that's probably my defined title, but I also am a wife and a mom to two very growing boys, and I love what I do, and I love working with people who are super energetic and passionate about kids.
I love it. Now, you have a very unique job because you don't hear many people who are principal of a campus of all kindergarten students.
No.
So how long have you been there, and what's that been like?
Oh, G family's here. Oh my gosh. And I'm a drummer. This is crazy. So I like to introduce people as I'm a recovering assistant middle school principal. So all my experiences were really secondary, and I had an opportunity in Austin. The superintendent asked me if I wanted to run a kindergarten center, and I knew nothing about kindergarten. I didn't understand it, and 6 years later, the staff still keeps me around. So, hi, Dad. So it's been really cool. So I've really grown in that opportunity and learned a ton, not just about leadership, but life in general.
Yeah, kindergarten's quite different than secondary, for sure. That's like the complete opposite spectrum.
Oh my gosh. I've run into a lot of my former middle schoolers now as adults. And it's hilarious because I was just at an event at the library this weekend, and I was talking to one of my former students, and in the meantime, 6 little kids ran up and hugged me, and he's like, I didn't do that to you when I was in middle school. I'm like, no, you didn't. I said, they all run away from you when they're in middle school, and then when you're in kindergarten, they run at you.
Yep, that's right. And sometimes they run away, too.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, sometimes.
So when you and I were talking, Jessica, you had your community that you serve in is a very unique community, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I've got some unique qualities. So tell us a little bit about what makes it so unique.
Absolutely. Well, I wouldn't be able to not mention spam whenever I talk, and you know that very well. I love spam.
I was waiting.
I sent you a spam shirt, I think. I'm pretty sure I've sent you some spam merchandise.
You did.
But the reason I love spam is Austin, Minnesota is the international world headquarters of Hormel, which is who makes spam. And so, yes, G family spam. She knew I was going to say it. But why I love that is Austin then is home to a very diverse makeup of membership. And so the families that we serve in the Woodson Kindergarten Center represent the community as a whole. So this year we had over 20 different languages in our community, which is, for a rural area in Minnesota, it's pretty unheard of to have that rich of a diversity. But that's what makes the Kindergarten Center the happiest place in southeastern Minnesota. And those experiences shape me as a person to interact with all these different families.
So how many students do you serve at your school?
This year we have over 400 5-year-olds, and then we also have a preschool section at Woodson that has about 16 students that will be kindergartners next year. So it makes to be a very full campus, but a lot of joy, a lot of joy.
So obviously, dealing with a school where you've got 20 different languages minimum that are spoken in the community, and that the kids are coming to you and the families are coming to you, how do you connect with those families when you don't speak the same language? Because I know here in Texas, typically our students who speak a different language, they are speaking Spanish. Mm-hmm. And we may have a couple who speak Chinese. I know we've had that over the years, but that's about it. And so, like, when us down here, when we think of bilingual program, we're like, oh, it's a Spanish program and an English program. But of course, bilingual means something totally different to a population like yours. So how do you connect with those families when you can't speak their language?
Well, and Julie is watching right now, and she's a teacher in our building as well. It's really about building relationships. Honestly, parents love their children, and you can show that you care for all children regardless of what language they speak. And so a lot of times it's just being present in different environments in the Austin community and just being vulnerable and saying, I might not know how to speak the language, but I love your children and I want to make sure that they're successful. And so to initially build that relationship has been really important. And then I've had such a unique position in this community where now it's been about 5-6 years ago, we adopted our son from Ethiopia. And so I'm super passionate about raising a bicultural child. And so that means I need to be very grounded in the African community in Austin and recognize that I can't parent him alone. And so those experiences have really extended the network and understanding of family for me. So I have moms who help me with hair care. I have dads who show me where the African market is to buy the specific lotion to keep his skin looking well. And I have, I follow a young man who's a freshman at the University of Minnesota who had the most unbelievable graduation speech last year that makes me want my son to be him as he grows up, and he's from Ethiopia as well. So it's just really embracing the word family in such a rich, different way. And I think because I make those intentional connections with people and they see I'm genuine in that, they're more willing to open up about their struggles and their perseverance, not only here in the United States, but in their former countries too.
I love that. I want to talk about your son for a minute. What is his name?
Isaiah.
So Isaiah. So how old was Isaiah when you adopted him?
Isaiah was 5.5. And so my husband and I made the first trip together to Ethiopia. And then we had some difficulties with government and some disruptions in the process. So then the second trip was made just by myself. But there was such a community of people that loved and watched and prayed over him during that time that when I got there, it was like I hadn't left. And I had a group of family that helped me get through the embassy process, helped me get him on an airplane home. And he and I started kindergarten together about 8 months after he was home. And that kid,
wow.
I think he's still taking a advanced math assessment right now. So I don't think he and Mr. Wolf are watching right now, but he is now a 5th grader with no English language support. He's in advanced coursework, and he makes me a better person, a completely better person in the community.
So when you adopted Isaiah, he didn't speak English, right?
No, and the tribe in which he came from, he had a different dialect from where he was at the orphanage. So he had a long silent phase. And we're just so blessed in our community here in Austin that we have people that speak his home language and that look like him. And so he can continue to develop his Ethiopian culture even here in America, and especially in Austin, Minnesota. So it's so important for me as a leader to make sure that not only does my son have experiences to have people that look like him and role model, but then all of my students have that opportunity as well.
I love that. I love knowing that you live in rural Minnesota,
I know.
but yet there are families there who speak the same language as your Ethiopian son. That's so cool to me.
It is.
To be able that you get to provide that to him, because, you know, typically you think of rural, everybody looks the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that he still gets to have that part. And most importantly, that you are really passionate about celebrating where he comes from,
Mm-hmm.
And not forcing him to fit into some kind of American mold or anything like that. Now, I know that obviously if you serve a community where there are a bunch of languages, you're going to have people who have immigrated from a lot of different places, especially with the way things are now in our country and in our culture. What do you find? How do you find yourself helping alleviate some of the fears of some of the families that you serve?
I think just showing up, being genuine, showing up. I have invited myself into a lot of different opportunities, and it's so humbling to experience things from a different perspective. So I have the blessing of being emergency contacts for a number of different African families here. So I get to learn everything from filling out a free and reduced lunch form to looking at tax paperwork, to going to doctor's appointments, to court appointments, to meeting with judges. So it's such a humbling experience to walk through those processes hand in hand with families that don't have those experiences. And it's just the perseverance of the community of people that are in Austin just makes not only my life better, but our students and staff's lives as well.
I love it. Well, you know, Jessica, I've known you for a few years now,
Yes.
and we were talking on Voxer, and that was one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on as one of my guests, is because you were telling me stories just like what you just said about connecting with families, and you know, as educators and as administrators, we go and we connect with families all the time, and we empathize with them. We try to be there for their kids. But what I really admire about the work that you do in your community is you truly take that extra step to be a surrogate family member
Mm-hmm.
for so many of those families, and that is not widely seen in education. Especially, I mean, we all have so many heavy workloads, and you have your own family as well. But I just admire the work that you do to help other families have the same opportunity
Mm-hmm.
that your family has. But you said something in one of the boxes, and I wrote it down, and I have it posted because I loved it so much. So I'm going to read it
Yes.
so I can get it
Okay.
right. You said, sometimes your story becomes your students' and families' stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love that so much because that's true when you really get to know and invest in somebody.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is one of those situations that's going to stick with you for the rest of your life? Something that you investing in somebody else had such a big impact on your personal life.
I think, and she's not watching today, but I'm going to make sure she's down in Nashville now. But my friend Martha, I'm going to wave now, but she was from Ethiopia, and she's a beautiful mother of beautiful, beautiful daughters. And I was able to walk through a journey with her eldest daughter, in that just humbled me as a person and as a mother. And she walked through some of the difficult times of adopting and going through Ethiopia. And we just kept paralleling our lives in the sense of we'd have hardships together, and then we'd have celebrations. And then we would go through things where I needed to understand what was going on in the Sudanese community because her husband was over there. And then she needed to understand what the different legal ramifications were here in the schools for her education of her daughters. And it's been such a blessing because I was able to serve multiple siblings, not only at the kindergarten center, but when I was at the middle school too. And so one other story, I love high school graduation. I serve as a bouncer or a liaison at graduation. This will be my 11th year doing it. I do it because
I like bouncer.
I love to hear stories from students as they're graduating about their best memories. I always go to the upper deck of the auditorium because I like to watch I have a family, and Bakai might be here, I'm not sure if she is today, but I got to go down a whole aisle, and I thought I had the daughter in high school, I had the son in high school, the boy is a good friend of my older son, I had the twins at the kindergarten center, and I see the youngest at the Head Start program. So to be able to go down an aisle of a graduation ceremony and say you've been a part of each one of their lives is incredible. It's so touching. And the thing is everyone's like, well, it's such a nice thing that you do for these families. And really what they give to me, I'm never going to be able to repay. The cultural connections, the understandings of things that I would never experience on my own. And the fact that these women make me food for my family that I can't make. And it just makes Isaiah, it's home for Isaiah, the injera, the Dora Watt, the bread, the community, the way they celebrate food has been just a beautiful testimony to just being open and vulnerable to people. I've been able to go to African funerals. I've been able to be at the darkest hour, but then I've been able to go to graduations and birthday parties. And when South Sudan had their celebration, their freedom celebration, I got to share in that joy too. So it's just really being not afraid to just jump into something, even if you're scared. Because it's just risk taking. We ask our kids every day to try to read a book, to try to make friends, to try to take an exam, and where do we lose that opportunity to take risks as adults? We just need to model that more for our students.
I love that. Well, that leads perfectly into my next question. What I found by educating myself on other cultures and really getting involved in that process, there's so many people who don't get to know other people from other cultures because often they feel like they don't know how to approach the conversation or how to approach somebody who speaks a different language or comes from a different country or has different religious beliefs. Obviously, that comes pretty natural to you, or was it something that you really had to work at? And what kind of advice would you give to others who want to connect better with people who are different than them?
So growing up, I grew up in actually northern Wisconsin in a very rural environment. And so everybody looked like me. But I I had parents who were so passionate about letting me know that people that looked different than me was okay. My dad was a football coach and recruited from Florida. So a lot of the football players that were my babysitter did not look like me and weren't from the area. So I learned early on that we love everybody, regardless of where they come from. And I think I've just been able to take that into my career as an educator and hopefully inspire other people to just try. And I think I'm really involved in our church African ministry. And last year I was invited to attend a women's retreat. And so there were 10 women from Africa and then 10 women from the United States. And I facilitated a circle in which we were to take a step forward if we had something in common. And we found out that we had so much more in common than we had in differences. We all loved our children. We all hated that our husbands didn't do the laundry. We all, wanted better for our children than we had for ourselves. And we all had issues with dad on our cell phones. A lot of us were problem solving. And we didn't speak the same language, but this was just through a translator and just experiences. And most of that weekend was more in silence in the sense that we couldn't speak together. But our eye contact, our hugs, our touch, our walking in nature, and just that prayerful commitment to just wanting better for ourselves and our families. I still see those women in the community and we still hug and kiss each other like we're still in that retreat center. So I really do just encourage you to try. No one's going to be offended that you tried to speak or connect with somebody, regardless of the language. If you're going in with a commitment to their students and their children, they're going to appreciate any gesture you can make.
I love that. So what is the biggest lesson you've learned from Isaiah?
Just one. Oh my gosh, today.
Because he's what? He's 12 now, right?
He'll be 12 in June. Yep, he'll be 12 in June.
I was gonna say, I'm trying to do the math.
Yeah.
So.
I think I have learned that love looks different. Love.
And how so? What do you mean?
I think when he and I first started our relationship together, the way in which he demonstrated love to me wasn't how I was used to receiving it. And sometimes that was really hard for me because that's not what I wanted, but that wasn't what he needed then. And so just persevering and building relationship and showing up every single day. And he knew no matter what, he wasn't going to leave my house. No matter what, I was going to love him. And he has a community here, not only in our immediate family, but in Austin, that want to see him successful. We're at a point now where he'll hold my hand, he'll give me a kiss, he'll give me a hug. And those of the staff at Ellis Middle School and the staff at Woodson when we started know that didn't come easy to either one of us. And so they hugged, they gave us, when I was crying, when I was upset, and they celebrate with us now when he's, he comes up and gives me a hug and you can tell it doesn't hurt him anymore. So that's what he's taught me, is that just because love looks different doesn't mean that it's not love.
That's powerful. I'm sorry. That's really that's another quotable moment
good.
There, and that totally threw me off with where I was going to go next, because that's just such a cool story. So have you had an opportunity to go back to Ethiopia with him yet?
No. One of the things, and I think you touched on last week too, is when you come from a different country, especially war-torn and trauma, there's a lot of things that he and I still work through, and we have this incredible therapist who has been with us before Isaiah came home and will probably be at Isaiah's wedding. He's an extended part of our family too. And so we're working through that process. We have contact with Mom and we share our successes and we talk to her about things. But I am working really hard to put money aside that he and I can go back together. And I think from my days at the middle school, that's kind of the time I want him to go back, is 7th or 8th grade, because I saw when I was at the middle school, a lot of our African boys struggled with identity at that age. And I think that would just be a wonderful time for him and I to go back and see Mom and see where he came from so he knows where he's going. Because I told him, I said, we can go, and once you graduate college, we can go to Africa and I will open a school there and I'll be your next door neighbor. But I said, I made a promise to your mom that you were going to graduate and become self-sufficient. And so that's my promise to her and to you. And once that's done, we can hop on a plane and can open a kindergarten center in Ethiopia in 10 years.
I love that. And I love that you have kept a relationship with the family as well and kind of kept that door open. Does he have memories from Ethiopia?
Yes. Yep. And what we're learning from the therapist is a lot of those are called imprints. So a lot of times now that he's feeling much more safe and secure with us, he's able to open up and he's able to tell us some of the things, some of the loving memories and some of the scary things. And it's helped us to understand some of the behaviors we see at home and have a better understanding of that. And I think as an administrator working with children with trauma, it's so different when you're the parent of a child with trauma versus the principal. because I have a lot more empathy because I've walked that walk with parents. And so foster parents, things like that, we'll sit in my office and cry. Both of us will, because we're both going through a journey, and on the outside it looks great and people think we're really doing well, but on the inside it hurts and it's hard. So I think it's just really important to be okay with sharing your story, and sometimes you might get burned with it, but so many more times parents need to hear that you're a person too and you're not perfect. You just have to watch my kids at church to know that, or Hy-Vee, that we struggle with things too. And so just because I have a title doesn't mean that I'm any more human than you are and that I can't learn from you as well.
Well, and that's what we found even when my staff and I wrote stories for web. We talked to, one of the things we noticed afterwards was, I tell this story all the time, one of the stories that's in the book, a teacher wrote about suffering several miscarriages, and she shared a very personal, honest story and how that affected her and her husband. And I remember that right after the book came out, another staff member had read it, and they went up and just went and found her and gave her a hug and just told her, thank you for telling the story, mainly because it made me feel like I wasn't alone in what I went through. And I think, like, especially when you deal with very difficult things, whether that's a death or the trauma in your life, like you're talking about, oftentimes those are the parts of our stories that we want to hide, or we don't want to tell the whole thing because it's painful or it's ugly or it's difficult. But I think that just like what you were sharing, those stories, even though sometimes they're the most painful to tell, they leave the biggest impact and allow you to connect even deeper with people, because it's such an emotional level that you're connecting on. And even Josh Stamper last week, he and his wife Leslie wrote about trauma and then talked about it a little bit with the couple children they've adopted, and just how that affects you. And I love that you talk about how that also builds more empathy in you as a leader, because you have a whole nother idea and understanding of where these parents are coming from and the emotions they're feeling.
Well, and it's such a two-way street. So then I can ask parents too, how have you dealt with this? Have you had issues with regression? Have you had issues with all of a sudden things just, blowing up at school? How do you handle that? So it's been such a great support group too, to be able to be genuine, to say, I'm struggling and I'm hurting and I need help, because it is so different, and it's really hard to connect with people that haven't had that experience because they think they know, but until you really walk that walk, you don't know.
I love that. Well, thank you,
Jessica,
for just being honest and sharing the story. So you have another son, correct?
Kenny, yes, 7th grade Kenny.
So how is Kenny connected with your other son?
Oh, they're best friends. And by best friends, I mean they broke the couch over Christmas break kind of thing. So hi Laura. So they love each other. And Kenny is the most compassionate 7th grader I've ever met. He, and Mr. D is a teacher, he's with me today, but Kenny volunteers every summer for the preschool Jumpstart program and works with the kids, helps them reading, helps them with gym, and then makes multiple visits throughout the year to come back. So it's just so exciting to see Kenny have such compassion, and it's exciting because I know my parents raised me that way, and so I'm really hopeful that I can go ahead and continue to do that with my own children.
I love that. Well, before we end this week's episode of Tell Your Story, we've got to talk about, you have a just recently released book out, right?
I know.
So tell us about that, because that's so exciting.
Oh, it's really weird. Mark Barnes is on right now. So so as I said, I was a recovering assistant middle school principal who turned kindergarten principal, and kind of my dissertation of this process was the writing of Hacking Early Learning. And so it's an easy read book for people who want to grow in understanding the pre-K-3 alignment and how they can do better. Because a lot of leaders came into this work as secondary administrators and now are in charge of little people. Or teachers are just looking for ways to better developmentally appropriate practices with those academic standards that we all need to reach. And so this book has high raws. Oh, geez. So this book has really just been a labor of love, and the community has been so supportive, and the Woodson staff are incredible. They as I talk to you, they want to do a book party. We want to have a party.
I know, I love it.
We wrote the book. We want a party. The teachers are buying it in the pairs, and I'm signing it. It's so surreal. But again, it's that community that I live in that just truly is innovative and values education, and so it's an honor to serve them every day.
Well, I already have my copy ordered on Amazon.
Thank you.
I think it comes in today, actually. So super proud of you. And I got to say, you know, one of my favorite things about talking to you is, you know, when you talk to different educators and you interact with them a lot on social media and you get to know them there, you form an idea of what their personality looks like because of what they share on social media. But what I love about you is you are genuine, compassion and genuineness just as an overall human. I mean, just the fact that we're on here doing this and I see that you can see names pop up who
Yeah.
are joining and you're like, oh hey,
Yeah.
oh hey. And so I love that. That is my favorite part of this whole thing,
Oh,
is
man.
just how much of a just overall great person you are. And so I knew that I had to have you as a guest just because I admire your work so much. And just you as a human being, I aspire to have a lot of the qualities that you,
thank you.
definitely put out there. And thank you so much for what you are doing in your community, with your families and your students, and within your own personal family. But also, I just want to thank you for telling your story today, because I know whether it impacted anybody else or not, it impacted me just getting to hear the things you had to share. So thank you for telling your story.
Thanks for this opportunity and for the work you're doing, and the importance of just being honest and sharing a story. And you just never, like you said, you just never know who it'll touch and impact. So thank you for your work, Todd.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Remember, you can join us every Tuesday at 4 p.m. right here on Facebook Live, as we allow different people to tell their story, all based after the book, Stories from Web. So get out there, use the hashtag #TellYourStory and share parts of your story, and join our Twitter chat on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.